Hi there guys, Tom Quayle here. Welcome back to the channel. Hope everybody's doing very well indeed. Today I'm checking out a really cool product actually. This is from the guys at Boss, and you've probably seen this before because this was launched a while ago, but it's the first time I've got to check it out. This is the GX-100. Now, actually a few years ago now when the GT1000 launched, I did one of the early videos for it when I was doing Dawson's videos back on their YouTube channel. Genuinely blown away by that product, and now I've got a GT1000 core that I use. It's in the studio down there actually, that I use a lot because it's very compact and it's really, really powerful. So I was very interested to check out the GX100. Now, the thing with the GT1000 that really blew me away at the time was just how fantastic it felt to play as a modeler. It kind of stood significantly head and shoulders above a lot of the stuff that I tried within that price point in terms of how it felt. And obviously this is one of the key points with modeling units, is how do they feel under the fingers. And Boss have got some unique tech going on in terms of their ADDA conversion and the quality of that conversion and how it works that really seems to make this feel as good as plugging into a tube amp, and that's kind of the holy grail for this kind of stuff. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, and I know it's kind of like one of those things that people say about these products all the time, but genuinely playing through any of these units, the GT1000, the GT1000 Core, or the GX100 in this case, because it's the same core technology, the AIRD technology, and their sort of proprietary ADDA conversion. It just feels great to play through, it really, really does. So what I've done with this is I've set up 3 different patches. So I've got my TQ lead tone. A cheeky DUMBL without the E clone sort of sound. And then a clean tone based on a Fender Twin. In terms of the setup, compared to the more expensive brother, the GT1000, there's a few things going on here that make this really, really appealing as a unit. The first is, for the first time ever on a Boss unit, we've got a colour touchscreen. If you've used the GT1000, it's a good interface, you know, in terms of actually the user interface, but I think a lot of people have got used to using colour screens for a start and also touch interfaces with some of these units. And now Boss have got that integrated. So you can see this nice colour screen here with lots of different modes that you can use to check out what effects you've got. But if I hit the effects button here, we've got a fully touch integrated display here. We can go in and see any of the insane number of effects that are available to you. It's literally, you know, almost never ending. It's crazy. And all the Boss favorites are on there. You've got your slow gear, you've got your Terra Echo, you know, all of the X series units, so like the drives that are on there. I've actually got one in this particular patch, the XOD. You've got the X amps that use the NDP technology for kind of tracking individual strings. All of that stuff is in there, you know, hundreds of different things that you can utilize. Your signal chain is completely flexible, unlike the GT1000 and 1000 Core, so you can actually update the signal chain to be in any order you like, which is very cool. And again, in terms of adding and, you know, removing effects and editing effects, it's as simple as, let's say for instance, this phaser here. Tap on it, there's the actual block, and I can place it with my finger anywhere in the signal chain I want and just drop it. And now, oh, I don't want to overwrite the effect. Let me drag that in again. Let's add it. There we go. Okay, now I've got a phaser. My signal path, check out those delays. They make me very happy indeed. They sound great in stereo. Now, again, if I want to edit that block, just tap on it. You can see we get the little kind of housing icon around it, and then the controls are all at the bottom. So we've got 4 dials on here. Again, similar setup to the GT1000 and Core, but now with the touchscreen, it's very easy to move to any effect that you want to, customize that. And if you want to remove something, let's say I want to remove the phaser, just drag it back up to the top and it's gone. Simple as that. Moving things around is very simple as well. So you've now got all of the power and feel is really important here, of the GT1000, but with, you know, this flexible, very simple control setup. And if you want to go further and assign things to the controllers on here, you've got your standard sort of 4 controllers and then the C1 and C2 buttons, which are very flexible. You can assign multiple things to those as you want. So for example, on here, if I go back out to my main screen, There we go. So I've got like manual 2 here. Assigned to my overdrive, for example, I've got compression assigned to you know, the first foot switch. Standard stuff for Boss, but in this case, much easier to do because we've got the touchscreen on there. I can also use the touchscreen to turn each of the effects on and off as I so desire. You know, we can move from manual mode through to memory mode, so you can use these to switch between presets, or you can assign them to any functionality that you want within the unit. So it's really, really easy to use and it sounds great. But the thing is, I know a lot of you guys out there are getting into kind of, or you're already using modeling devices from a plugin perspective. And plugins are great in some ways because, you know, they're very affordable, provided you've got all the gear to be able to do it, of course, and they give you access to some great tones. But I actually think from a plugin perspective, whilst I do use them myself, they're a compromise in many ways that you don't get with a hardware unit. And in this case, one with probably the lowest latency on the market for hardware modeling and also really good ADDA conversion. So for those that don't know, the ADDA conversion is analog to digital. So you're converting the analog signal from the guitar to digital and then back on the output stage from digital to analog. You need that process to be as exceptional as possible in order to collect all the transients that you're playing, to convert all the nuances of your playing in the best possible way. And the front end I'm plugging in here that Boss have got for this setup for the ADDA conversion is really, really exceptional. It just feels fantastic to play. Now, when you're playing through plugins, again, they're great. I love them. I use them all the time. But I feel like you're generally going to get a compromised experience for a few different reasons. The first one is latency. So with the latency of a device, basically if you're plugging into like a Focusrite interface or a PreSonus interface or even a universal audio interface, the drivers that the companies create for these units, they don't always give you the best latency. Okay, so you have to set the buffer sizes low. As the user, you need to know what you're doing. In order to do that, you've got to have a fast computer in order to be able to set the buffer sizes low. And you can be working in some cases with latencies of up to sort of 10, 15 milliseconds, and you are going to notice that. Whereas with a unit like this, with again the exceptional ADDA conversion and the very low latency, you've got the same instantaneous response and feel that you would get with a tube amp. And that's why I do use the GT1000 core within my setup. I think it really feels fantastic as a unit, and you know the same goes for this here. The other thing with plugins is that you're getting a kind of feel from those units, or not units, from the plugins, which isn't necessarily translating in the same way as you would get with a hardware unit. All of those little nuances in your playing, you know, the input stage, that two-way response that you get from a tube amp when you plug into a really great tube amp, any of these amps that I've got here, the way that the pickups react with the tube amp, you know, the way that the speaker reacts, so on and so forth, is very, very difficult to get when you're plugging into an audio interface, where that particular audio interface is not necessarily set up for giving you the optimized experience of plugging a guitar into a plugin, you know, in the case of, you know, any of the plugins that are on the market. It does require that you've got a very good quality DI box and you know how to set that up, you know how to gain stage it. There's a lot of stuff along the way that could go wrong. If you know what you're doing and you've got a really expensive audio interface, you can generally find that you can get away with it and it sounds really great. But I often wonder whether I'm getting a compromised experience plugging into a fairly cheap audio interface, you know, running the latency fairly high compared to a hardware unit and not getting that two-way communication that you would get with a tube amp plugged into a really great speaker. So that can often be something that you feel, you know, maybe you have never noticed, maybe you've never plugged into a tube amp, you know, and you're not getting the full experience of playing a guitar and that kind of transient response, the dynamics that you would get by doing that. This is going to give you that. It's going to give you that really nice dynamic and feel and response, that two-way response that you would get from plugging into a tube amp. So with that said, let's check out some of these tones. So I'm going to go across here to this first tone, TQ lead tone. And this is a customized lead tone that I set up based on one of the patches that was already in the unit. Now, before I actually play it for you, I just want to talk a little tiny bit about the way that this is set up as a unit. The GX-100 and the GT1000 and the core allow you to set up the input and the output stage specifically for your setup. And this is really important. And again, it's something that people don't necessarily do when they use plugins. You just plug straight in, set the gain, you know, and then hope the latency is okay and just go for it. And you're not necessarily getting the optimized experience. So in this case, when I hit on the in and out settings here, and I go to input settings, hopefully you can see that I've actually got two different setups here. One is specifically for this TQMS1 guitar. And what I've done is I've gain staged the input of the unit to match my guitar. So I've got a plus 9 dB boost to give me the optimum input so that when I actually play here, hopefully you can see the input stage is actually peaking in the yellow when I play really hard. Now, for my TQ-M1, which is my other guitar, which has got much higher output pickups, I can actually go down and select that specific guitar here, and I've got a -2 dB cut or pad on there. That then makes the input stage here, again, peak into the yellow when I play hard, depending on which pickup I'm using, obviously. But I did the gain staging with the humbucker here, which is the higher output pickup. And I would do the same with the bridge pickup on my TQ-M1. And that's going to give me the optimum input stage for this unit. It means that I'm getting the best gain staging and I'm getting the best feel, the best ADDA conversion. I'm running those converters nice and hot, and therefore I'm getting the most dynamic range out of my guitar, which is what you want when you're using a unit like this. And again, it's really easy to do. You can store a bunch of different guitars. You can even, if you're somebody who doubles on bass, for example, you can come in and say, okay, well, actually, this instrument is a bass, and then you can optimize for the pickups, gain stage for the pickups on your bass. So that makes things really straightforward. If you just come in and you say, today I'm playing the bass, I'm going to use some of the kind of bass processing on here, just select the right instrument. Very simple to do just by hitting the I/O or in-out settings, input settings, and then select the right instrument. As far as the output settings go, Boss also allow you to come in and say, okay, well, what level do I want here? Am I going into the front of an amp, or am I going into my line level gear, which is what I'm doing here? And then you can also come in and say, okay, well, what am I plugging into? And again, this is really important. This is not something you can do on a lot of other modelers. You know, the other modelers on the market are fantastic. Obviously, I own all of them, but this is really useful and unique. So if you're plugging into, for example, obviously, there's a lot of kind of Roland and Boss gear on here, which makes sense. So you've got Katana and JC-120, for example. But if you look, we've got JC-120 return, JC-120 input, Katana, you know, return, 212, it's 2x12, so on and so forth. And as you select these, it will optimize the output stage to match your particular setup. So if you want to plug into the input of the amplifier, as opposed to the effects return, just a power amp, it will optimize that for you. So this is really cool. So we've got generic tube amp 212 return, for example, if you're a combo. Keep going down, we've got stack, 4x12. All of this stuff that makes this very easy to optimize again. And this is what it's all about. You don't want a compromised experience with this stuff. Why would you want to compromise on your tone, you know, and on the feel of the guitar? So this allows you to get the optimal experience from the hardware, which I think is really useful with something like this. The only other thing that I've done here is, and this is kind of standard now, a lot of people are talking about this stuff, I think it's really useful when you're running full range like this and running through my studio monitors, is I've got a high cut at 6.3K and then a low cut, you know, and that just enables me to get rid of any of those useless frequencies that we don't normally hear on guitar. So if I just set the high cut all the way to flat here, have a listen. If you're on headphones or through good studio monitors, you won't be able to hear this on a phone. Or maybe you will, because they reproduce those high frequencies in a really annoying, shrill way. But if I play now with the high cut off, it's a great tone, it feels great to play, but there's a lot of kind of, I don't know how you describe it, shimmery high frequencies at the top that we don't need. So we can dial those out. And again, this is standard on a lot of modelers, but this is just so easy to do on the the GX-100. I won't be the only person who's done that. So we dial that out. It sounds great. It sounds more like a tube amp would sound. So let's exit from there and let's listen to some of these tones. So basically this lead tone is a relatively high gain amp sound. Now, one of the things that Boss do is they don't necessarily name their amps in the same way that, you know, you would find on some other modelers where you've got like specific amps named. That's actually a good thing because it means that you don't have this biased approach to your amp selection. You can listen to some of the different amps and just use your ears to decide what sounds good to you and what doesn't. So in this particular example here, I've got 2 amps set up, although I'm only using the top one at this stage because I'm going up to that other, the left-hand signal path. So in this case, it's the X high gain, okay? Now again, this is one of these MDP amps that's gonna really kind of listen to the different strings and the frequencies that I'm producing and optimize the tone for that, which is great. And again, from a dynamic range response and a kind of feel and touch response, this is fantastic, really, really great. So I'm on the neck pickup here. Excuse any noise, sort of RF noise that I've got in the studio. It's really annoying, but it's there. Let's just check out the dynamic range and pick attack for a start. It's fantastic to play through. It just feels really, really nice. All of that dynamic range is represented really well. There's an instantaneous feel to it. It just, you know, there's no kind of barrier between the expression of what you want to play and how it sounds. So it's fantastic, really, really nice. Now, in terms of the controls that I've got going on here, all my patches are very similar. So I've got delay assigned to C1. There is a wire in there as well, but at the moment it's set up as a volume pedal. So that's set up, I can do pre-delay swells if I want to and have all those delays and stuff ringing out in the background. But I can't reach it right now, so you have to take my word for it. I've got the reverb assigned to manual 4 and then an overdrive compression and a graphic EQ in case there's too much bass going on. If you're on stage and there's a bit too much woof going on, you can turn the graphic EQ on and it's really easy to do, you know, remove some of that low end. So if I bring the reverb and delay back on, so if I do need a boost at all, I can actually just roll in that OD and it's going to give me a really nice kind of gain boost if I'm feeling a bit like I need that extra. So great, really, really, really nice. So that's the first patch. If I go to here, you can see the name of the patch. Just a really quick thing as well, which is really, really nice. There is a really nice quality tuner in here. I've just remembered about this. I use it in the strobe tuning mode, and it's really accurate. You can see the strobe in there that's going on. That's a really nice feature to have on here. There's also a poly tuner, which is great. It doesn't work for me because I don't tune in standard tuning. So I use the strobe tuner, but the poly tune's got a really nice interface as well. So, sorry to block the screen here. Here you can see the poly tune. That's a really nice way of tuning really quickly, which is great. So, and you can see the tuner is assigned to C2 as well if you hold it down. So that's really nice. I just wanted to show that really quickly. Oops. So if I go to my second tone, this is a kind of DUMBL-y kind of sound. And again, I've picked these tones because they've got this really nice dynamic range to them, to demonstrate some of that kind of feel that you're getting here and the fact that it just, there's no barrier to expression here with this stuff. You know, you could make some terrible tones. You could make some terrible tones with any modeling unit, but the tones here, it's been so easy to make these great sounding and feeling tones. So this one here is 2 amps. So if I go to my setup here, you can see I've got 2 amps here. The first one is this X Crunch. And the reason I did this is I've got one of my buddies here, Mark from Boss, and he said, you need to check out the X Crunch tone as or amp as a clean tone. So I thought, okay, well, let's check that out. And it sounds fantastic when you set it to the lower gain mode. So one of the nice things about these units is that this gain switch that we've got here, you can actually modify the amp to have 3 different gain stages. It's a little bit like I have a Dirty Shirley over here, and it's the same thing. You can set the gain stage to be whatever you want in terms of low, high, or medium. And that means that effectively you've got 3 different sort of channels, if you like, within each of these amps, which is kind of cool. So you can experiment with some of the amps that you wouldn't necessarily think of using as clean tones. So in this case, the X Crunch is a clean tone. So that's what I've done there. And then I've set the Boutique amp, which is kind of based on a Robin Fordy kind of vibe, to be crunchier. So it's also set with the gain switch low, but the gain is set fairly high. Then I've just EQ'd to taste and mic'd to taste. So I'm using a condenser mic and a dynamic mic. And in this case, what I've also done is if I go across here, I don't want to move anything. There's the 2 amps in stereo, left and right, and then I've got an analog delay on either side after the amp running with the Andy Timmons style delay with a lot of modulation on, because I like a lot of modulation. So that's basically what's going on there, the same reverb as we had before. So let's go back to here. And again, I've assigned my pedals in a similar kind of way, basically. I haven't put the delay on here. I'll do that before we upload the patch, but these will all be available. And then there's a drive pedal on there as well. So in terms of dynamic range again, this is a naturally more compressed tone because of the way we're running the amps here, but listen to the edge of breakup nature that's going on here. Fantastic tone to play. Stick the overdrive on. It's got that lovely dark DUMBL-y vibe to it. Go to the neck pickup. That delay is awesome as well. Really, really fun to use. So that's the second patch. I'll just come out of here, whoops, go that way, and then show you the third patch. This is a clean tone, effectively. So I'm using a Fender Twin style, American style amplifier, whereas what we heard before was sort of more Britishy, kind of mid-rangey. This is more scooped, very clean. And in this case, as I say, I'm using the Fender Twin amp on the low gain setting. Again, tweak the mics a little bit, delay, reverb in the same way, the stereo kind of, because I love that. A little bit less modulation in this case. And again, a more scoopy kind of clean tone, very, very clean. Super inspiring tones. They're really, really fun to play through. And again, with this unit, compared to, you know, the more expensive GT-1000, which is again a great unit, so much easier to edit on this unit as well. And of course you get the Boss Tone Studio. You know, you can run this using the desktop interface. You can even get a Bluetooth unit to, you know, control it from your phone. The audio interface is on there. You've got MIDI, so on and so forth, full amp control, all the stuff you would expect to find on a really good high-end Boss multi-effects unit. And of course these guys invented this technology. You know, they came out with the COSM technology years and years and years ago. So you'd expect that they were doing some of the best kind of feel and response in the industry. So again, just like the GT-1000, I've been really impressed with the way that this feels and the dynamic response, you know, the latency of it. All of those things, those kind of key buzzwords that you want to be right within a unit like this. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's, you know, eminently affordable for a unit of this power as well. You know, you've got a more flexible signal chain on there as well. So there's not really anything to dislike about it. I think it's fantastic. And I've seen quite a few people on YouTube. You know, one of my buddies, Jonathan Cordy's getting some incredible tones out of this. I think it's underrated and it should really be checked out more by more guitar players. So definitely get yourselves, you know, down to a local store and check this out. It's really, really great. Well worth your investigation in terms of your time, and it's going to get you some great tones. So, as ever guys, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure you hit the like and subscribe buttons below, and of course hit that bell notification icon if you want to be notified every time I upload a video. And yeah, I will see you in the next one guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.